Yes, part two. Alrighty, down the rabbit hole with Dell, part two. We're starting with Rosicrucianism. Okay. The legend of Christian Rosenkreuz, who was supposedly born in Germany in 1378, dates back to the early 17th century and the publication of three manifestos between 1614 and 1616. Excuse me. According to the first of these manifestos, Fama Fraternitatis, Rosenkreuz went on pilgrimage to the Holy Land, where he learnt the occult secrets of the universe. On returning to Germany, he founded the Fraternity of the Rosy Cross. After his death at the age of 106, his seven-sided tomb was forgotten about until, that is, it was apparently rediscovered 120 years later in 1604 by followers of the fraternity. His body was uncorrupted, while lying beside it in the sarcophagus was the mysterious Book T. In the last of the manifestos, the chemical wedding of the Christian Rosenkreuz, chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, the protagonist visits a miraculous castle to witness a wedding. Interestingly, the wedding invitation incorporates John Dee's Monas. John Dee's Monas. There's no period there, but that's apparently the end of the sentence. Three manifestos explain the philosophy and history of Rosicrucianism, telling of an order of philosopher mystics. The unknown author calls for a moral and spiritual revolution in society and a deeper understanding of man's role in creation. Christian Rosenkreuz, referred to as Father CRC, say the manifestos had learnt Hermetic magic while in the Middle East, but had also been exposed to occult studies in Fez and the Gnostic Alumbrados, practitioners of a mystical form of Christianity, in Spain. Some scholars have suggested that Father CRC's journey is actually a veiled reference to the process of transmutation in alchemy. Rosicrucian philosophy is overwhelmingly Christian, albeit doggedly Protestant, and incorporating Hermetic magical thinking. There is evidence, too, of the strong influence of Heinrich Conrath, circa 1560 to 1605, a Hermetic philosopher from Dresden, Germany, who had met and been influenced by John Dee in 1589. Some believe that the three Rosicrucian manifestos are hoaxes. However, although the story they tell is certainly difficult to accept unreservedly, they had a huge impact on mystical thinking in Europe, influencing the development of Freemasonry and a raft of Rosicrucian societies in the late 19th century. All right, next we're going to spiritualism. Spiritualism. Although the belief that the dead can communicate with the living almost certainly dates back to prehistory, it was not until the mid-19th century that it became widespread across Europe and North America. Principally, this belief took the form of seances, in which people gathered with a spiritual medium to receive messages from spirits, even attempting to interact with the spiritual plane. The spiritualist movement grew out of a heady concoction, the ideas of Emanuel Swedenborg, combined with the theories of Anton Mesmer and some of the beliefs of the new religion of Mormonism. However, it really took off with the Fox sisters, Kate and Margaret, who in 1849 claimed to be able to communicate with the dead through rapping noises. Many years later, the sisters confessed to having created the noises themselves by clicking their joints. By that point, however, spiritualism had established itself across the United States and in Europe, as well as in Brazil. Among the tools used to contact spirits were the Ouija board from the 1880s onward and spirit slates, pieces of slate on which it was believed spirits could write. It was also said that they could communicate through raps and knocks. In some cases, spirits would apparently manifest themselves as ectoplasm, which would exude from the mouth of the medium. By the 1920s, in spite of strong support from such respected figures as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, spiritualism was largely discredited, with Harry Houdini, among others, actively disproving spiritualist theories and attacking fraudulent mediums. We're moving on to theosophy. Alrighty. The word theosophy, meaning God's wisdom, refers to the revelation of occult or esoteric knowledge about the mysteries of existence and creation. The term was first used in this context in the 13th century, but it was not until the final decades of the 19th century that its use became more widespread. The Theosophical Society, established in New York City in 1875, had three founders: Henry Steele Olcott, William Quan Judge, and most famously, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. All three were heavily influenced by Western esotericism, but also by Indian esoteric thought. Blavatsky was a spiritualist, clairvoyant, and psychic who from a young age had been fascinated by the Hermetic tradition, traveling the world in search of hidden wisdom. In 1888, she published The Secret Doctrine, which postulates the existence of secret masters, a group of shadowy individuals who controlled human destiny. Now we're moving on to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Founded in England on the 12th of February, 1888, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was the most influential magical society of its time. Created by Freemasons and Theosophists, it was open to men and women and grew by word of mouth. Its goal, according to the historian Israel Regardie, was to teach the principles of occult science and the magic of Hermes. The foundational documents, known as the cipher manuscripts, dictated the order's rituals and structure. While the precise origins of the documents remained a mystery, they eventually came into the possession of one of the order's founders, William Wynne Westcott, who then showed them to fellow founding member Samuel Liddell McGregor Mathers. According to Westcott, the cipher manuscripts contained the address of Anna Sprengel, a German countess and apparently a surviving Rosicrucian. It was Sprengel, again according to Westcott, who granted the order permission to found its first lodge, the Temple of Isis Urania in London. In all likelihood, both manuscripts and Sprengel were inventions, but the order had what it saw as a legitimate link to the original Rosicrucian and the history of magic. Original Rosicrucians and the history of magic. Hierarchically, the order was divided into 3 levels, each containing a number of grades, a structure not unlike that of Freemasonry, the grades of which there were 11 in total, were linked to the Kabbalistic tree of life. Something else worth studying, definitely. The Kabbalistic tree of life. The first level of the order was known as the Golden Dawn, with rituals around the metaphysical meanings of the 4 elements. The second, the Red Rose and Cross of Gold, and the third, the Secret Chiefs. Practical magic began with the second grade. The rituals reflected a strong Egyptian influence, as well as that of Kabbalah, Freemasonry, theurgy, alchemy, tarot, Rosicrucianism, and Enochian magic. The order grew to have more than 100 members, and best known among them being Aleister Crowley and the Irish poet W.B. Yeats. In the early years of the 20th century, however, internal feuding led to the order splintering into many smaller bodies, including Crowley's highly magical AA. The remaining rectified rite abandoned the order's magical elements altogether. And there's a chapter on Crowley. Not getting into that right now. I'm going to finish up with tarot. Okay? Although the cards that make up the tarot have been used for playing games since the 15th century, they are said to have originated in northern Italy. Their occult use dates back only to the 18th century. Today, the tarot is commonly used as a divination tool. How then did this particular deck of cards become associated with the supernatural? Regular playing cards have been used in divination rituals since the 16th century, but the use of the tarot for this purpose began in the 1700s. Antoine Court de Gibelin, who claimed that the tarot was the summation of the theology of ancient Egypt. In the decades that followed, Eliphas Levi associated the tarot with Kabbalah, while the Marquis Stanislas de Guaita, related the trump cards to a person's spiritual evolution. Others have claimed that the tarot is effectively the Book of Hermes Trismegistus. Attila, who popularized the tarot in the late 18th century, also viewed it as having ancient Egyptian origins. The 72 cards of the tarot are divided into major arcana and minor arcana. The minor being the 4 suits, today called pentacles, swords, cups, and wands. The major being the 22 trump cards, the Fool, the Magician, Death, and so on. If you've ever heard reference to the Fool's Journey, it's related to what each of the meanings of the tarot's major arcana cards mean. Originally, some cards had less occult names. The Magician, for example, was previously known as the Juggler. Today, the tarot comes in a variety of designs. The Marseille deck dates to the 17th century or earlier, while the Oswald Worth deck, 1889, was commissioned by de Guaita. The other main designs are Rider-Waite Smith. Smith is the lady who actually did the illustrations of the Rider-Waite decks. And that was from 1907. Still widely used. I have a few myself. The Golden Dawn deck, and the deck designed by Aleister Crowley and Lady Freda Harris, known as the Thoth deck, first issued in 1969. And with that, I'm going to end this trip down the rabbit hole. That should get you started on quite a few different avenues of metaphysical studies. As I said, there's a whole lot more in this book than I went over. And this is Christopher Dell's The Occult, Witchcraft, and Magic, an Illustrated History. Alrighty, so thank you for joining me. The other video was much longer, but I had to break it up. And if you enjoyed this, please hit like, follow, subscribe, share, and return. I will see y'all soon. Bye now.